Wait, can you show the camera?
Oh, yes. I think the topic has always been an important, sexology, but with such an increase and an explosion, if you like, of social media, that's why, it's important for us to start having these conversations and to be able to help people navigate the ins and outs of sex and relationships.
So what's one thing that you wish that everyone knew as a baseline?
Not to yuck someone else's yums. Masturbation is normal. We also know it has health benefits.
What are the health benefits?
Shame is something that we've learned. We're not born with it. And I use the shame analogy with a backpack. What Betty Martin talks about is what we call the wheel of consent. And it has 4 quadrants. And it's super sexy if you can actually tell your partner what you're into. The partner usually finds that really hot. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Great Wall of First of all, sex is not something that you do. It's something you experience. What this does is that it stops the from hitting at a certain depth. Then you need to, reclaim bossy. Here we go. You need to then decide, well, do I want to, stand my ground here, and do I want to risk myself maybe contracting an STI?
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh, Chantal, my mind is blown. I am so excited and happy to have you here today, Chantal. Can you please start by introducing yourself as if you're speaking to someone you've never met before?
Hi, Mahika. Thanks for having me today. I'm also quite excited. So, yes, my name is Chantal and I am a sex and relationship therapist. I'm also a senior lecturer at a London-based university. And how would I describe myself? As someone who is playful, adventurous, grounded, someone easy to talk to, curious, and very open-minded.
These are very important qualities and essential to our conversation today. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something that's very out of my wheelhouse, but I'm so excited to be having this conversation because Reclaiming Bossy is all about bringing important topics to people's lives in an accessible, easy to understand way, and really ungatekeeping and removing shame from topics and just having open discussions. Yeah. So for people who don't know what sexology is, how would you describe it and define it? And what would you want listeners to bring into this conversation?
So the best way to describe sexology, it's the science of human sexuality. And we look at topics such as how people experience sex, the type of relationships they have, attraction, desire. We talk about issues around consent, issues around sexual health practices, reproduction, and how, if you like, biological, psychological, and societal factors all might play a role.
That's awesome. And what is your backstory? How did you get into this work? Because I feel like it's such an interesting avenue. And so how does one become a sexologist?
So it started some time ago when I noticed that when I was at university, there was a real gap what students knew about sex and relationships. And I felt that needed addressing. So I had organized some lectures on basic sex ed, sexual health practices, and the use of porn. And what came from these conversations and sessions was such a wealth of richness, and it was so eye-opening that I kept thinking to myself, wow, there's so much more that I could perhaps bring into these sessions. Because I realized, Mahika, that so many students just did not have any access to solid, honest sex education. But in order to do so, I realized that I had to go back and do a level of upskilling. And that meant that I went back to doing some studying, and I then embarked on a 2-year degree on clinical sexology, did my clinical work, and subsequently became an accredited sex and relationship therapist. And I guess fast forward, here I am today, and it feels like I've got the best of both worlds. On the one hand, I'm able to teach the sex and relationship stuff to my students, And alongside, I've got my private practice where I can also support individuals and couples in their journey around sex and relationships. So I'm a happy bunny.
That sounds awesome. Why do you think sexology is important now? Especially because it's a topic that's so widely experienced, but people don't talk about it openly always. And so it's not understood. And you were talking about education. It's something that we were talking about off camera. Everyone has their very different levels of education depending on their backgrounds. And so why do you think it's important that people engage in good conversations around sexual education?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I think in particular now it's really relevant. To be honest, I think the topic has always been an important, sexology, but with such an increase and an explosion, if you like, of social media, we've got Facebook, we've got YouTube, we've got Instagram, we've got Reddit, we've got TikTok. And I think people out there are really struggling to be able to navigate perhaps what is true information, what is false, what is right, what is wrong. And I think that's why, it's important for us to start having these conversations and to be able to help people navigate the ins and outs of sex and relationships.
And what is something that you wish everyone knew about having healthy and good sex? Because like you said, so much information is all over the place. There's so many resources. No one knows what is a good resource, what's a true resource. So what's one thing that you wish that everyone knew as a baseline?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And for me, it's not to yuck someone else's yums.
What does that mean?
Especially providing, of course, that it's consensual. So, yums are what your likes are and the yucks are what your dislikes are. So you might have a particular yum, but your partner might not have that same yum. And not to shame that person because you have that yum.
Wow, I love that. And speaking of yums, we're now going to transition this conversation into solo sex because I think about that's where you start this conversation in order to find what your yums are.
Yeah.
But often people don't talk about that and it's a very stigmatized topic. And so I want to address that. You talk about masturbation as a tool for self-discovery. How can people redefine what solo sex means to them and rediscover pleasure by themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, solo sex, it's so important for us to be able to do that because it has so many benefits. I mean, the first one, of course, is to be able to understand our anatomy. Now, as a male, it's out there, they can see it. But for a female, it's very different. You really need to make an effort to be able to see your own anatomy. So masturbation helps you having to know your anatomy, knowing where everything is, what everything is, and what everything does. It also helps you understand how your body works. And that's, of course, really empowering because if we know what we like, if we know what gives us pleasure, if we know how we like to be touched, then, of course, when we're with a partner, it gives us the confidence then to also say to our partner how we want to be touched and what turns us on. It's empowering. Also, masturbation is, it's considered as often as a taboo. And, this might be in some cultures more than others. And of course, when it's considered a taboo, it has, that comes with a lot of distress for a lot of people because when they're masturbating, it might mean that they feel really guilty after they've done it. Or they might think that they're masturbating because there's something missing in their lives, right? But actually, masturbation is normal. In fact, it's part of our psychosexual development. And not only does it help us understand our own bodies, but we also know it has health benefits.
What are the health benefits?
For example, it helps reduce our stress. It helps improve sleep. And of course, when we have an orgasm, if we have an orgasm, it releases the so-called happy hormones, like the oxytocin, the dopamine, and the serotonin. And that gives us a lift in our mood. So masturbation is okay, and it's normal. Aside
from addressing that it's okay and normal, what do you think are some other ways that people can remove the stigma around sex? I'm literally sitting here with the laptop because I don't want to say the wrong thing. And I don't usually do that. But I think it's a conversation that's quite difficult to navigate, not just around solo sex, but sex in general, of not wanting to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or be shamed or be shameful. And so how can we not just reclaim being bossy, but reclaim like our bodies and our pleasure as well?
Yeah. So if we're talking about, how do we maybe manage the shame we might have around masturbation or around sex in general, I think the first step is to understand that that's incredibly common. So many people will have a degree of feeling shame. And we have to understand, where does that come from? Why are we maybe feeling this shame? And that's the first thing that we would unpack. And once we actually do that, we realize that why we feel shame comes from so many different places. For example, the moral and or cultural and or religious messages that we might have picked up along the way. For example, that masturbation is dirty. Masturbation is sinful. It's selfish. Or perhaps the gendered expectations that good girls don't masturbate, or real men don't need to. So it's about, if you like, separating the behavior from the meaning, because shame is something that we've learned. We're not born with it. It's not innate. And the evidence isn't because of something we're doing wrong, but the evidence is often because we've absorbed something or someone else's rule or norm around it. Mm-hmm. Once we've identified where it comes from, we then need to then work with it, sit with it, not fight it, but give shame a voice by noticing it. There's that tight, sinking feeling I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah.
Or calling it out, this is shame. It's not true. So being present to it, because the more we bring it out to the forefront, the more it becomes normalized. The more we start to recognize and understand that it's something that we've picked up along the way, and we're able to empower ourselves and decide that that's not what we believe in, but we have other belief systems, we can start creating different schematas and feel much more comfortable with that. There's this great thing that I really love doing with my clients, if I may. And I use the shame analogy with a backpack. So I ask my clients to imagine them having a backpack on their back. And that backpack is shame. And in that backpack, we have all these negative messages. We have all these sexual scripts that we've been told to believe in. And we ask them, how does that make you feel? And often the answer is, it makes me feel heavy. It makes me feel sad. What if you were to remove that backpack of shame and just put that aside? How would you feel? And what's so interesting is that at that point, you can see that the weight literally has been lifted from the client. They feel a sense of, as they say, lightness, freedom. Because ultimately, Mahika, shame has no place in our lives. It doesn't serve us in any shape or form.
Yeah. That's so powerful. Thank you for sharing the backpack thing. And I want to add something that I saw when I submitted a poll on the stories for the listeners. And I think that some people, they don't just pick up shame through things that have been said, but in the absence of things that have been said. Because in some cultures, people say you're not allowed to have sex before marriage, or sex is a sin, or masturbation is a sin. But in a lot of other environments and cultures, it's just not talked about.
Yeah.
And there is just total silence of what is allowed and what is not allowed and what is acceptable. And that silence is only broken once you've crossed a line and you've done something wrong. And so people often feel the shame in silence as well.
Yeah.
And so how would you address that if you don't even know what the messaging is, because it's something that's so subconscious and quiet, rather than specific comments that have been thrown at you throughout your life?
Yeah. I mean, and this is interesting you say that, because we know that secrecy actually feeds into shame, right? And often shame has been internalized in all different ways. And it's stuff that's, accumulated over time that, yes, like you say, we're not even aware of it. And that might manifest in very different ways. Perhaps the way we're having sex, for example. We might be holding back. We might struggle to let go because perhaps we might not feel safe. Or we might feel that we're not able to ask how we want to be touched. We might feel awkward about our bodies because we have this idea that our body needs to look in a particular way, including our vulva. So it can manifest in a lot of different ways. And we're not sure, and we're not aware of that. But often, these examples that I'm giving you, sometimes it's rooted within shame.
And I really liked your backpack analogy, but do you have some ways of how you can bring that into partnered sex and use like certain analogies or tools to have conversations around like removing shame and asking for what you want?
Yeah.
Or like, even if asking for what you want is really intimidating, just opening up the conversation towards exploration and like trying different things.
Yeah. There is a difficulty around communicating because we feel that, if we're going to communicate about how we may want to have pleasure or how we want to be touched or what we like and what we don't like, sometimes that puts us in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
And we might not like to feel vulnerable, and this can be for both persons with vaginas and persons with penises, if we think about what masculinity represents, So I always say to my clients, just start the conversation. So, asking someone, what are their turns on? How do they like to be touched? It's such an easy question to ask. And in fact, there's a really great game. It's called the 3-Minute Game. And it's been devised by Betty Martin. And you can download that online. It's free. And actually, it's a really good game because why this is such a great game is because it helps couples understand the differences between touch. Are you touching my partner? Are you touching your partner for your own benefit? Or are you touching them for their benefit?
Is it not both?
It depends. Not necessarily. And by actually doing this practice, you can actually start exploring. So basically you're asking someone, can I touch you for 3 minutes and maybe give you a head massage? Your response would be maybe, sure, you can touch me for 3 minutes in my head, but don't touch my neck. You're setting boundaries. So you're saying yes to, you can touch me, but at the same time, you're setting a boundary. So what I'm saying is actually it's when we're talking about boundaries and we're talking about consent, that's also a really great way to start having conversations about how you want to be touched, but also understanding that what Betty Martin talks about is what we call the wheel of consent. And it has 4 quadrants. It's the taking, it's the allowing, it's the serving, and it's the accepting. The taking is that you're touching for your benefit. The allowing is that your partner allows you to touch you for their benefit. Do you see the difference?
Yeah. It's never something I've ever considered, but really helpful.
But here's the problem. The minute we step outside the wheel, we have a problem, because outside the wheel, if we are allowing our partner to touch us, but we actually don't enjoy it, but we're too scared to say something or to stop it, or we don't want to disappoint them, we operate then outside the wheel, and then it becomes enduring, it becomes tolerating. And when we're at that part, if that's what we're experiencing, then this is going to have an impact on our pleasure. It's going to have an impact on our arousal. It's going to have an impact on how we are going to relate to our partner. It could build resentment. We become silent. And that's back to your question then. We're not communicating that perhaps when that person touches you or touches you in a particular way for their benefit, that you're too maybe scared to say that that's not what you want because you don't want to disappoint them.
Yeah. I think, again, from what I've seen, speaking to people in the community that we've built and friends of mine, sometimes it's not even fear, it's just a genuine lack of vocabulary. If you've never learned to talk about what you want and what you don't want, when it comes down to having those conversations, you just don't have the resources to do so.
Yeah.
And so where can people go to start building their vocabulary around like these kind of conversations? Because I think certain scripts around boundaries and stuff so important, but they can come across very unsexy and alienating to some people as well.
Yeah. So the Wheel of Consent is a great resource for people to tap into, and they really, this is a great conversation to start the process, but also just asking questions like, making it like, you see, the more we start analyzing it, the more we make it awkward. But if you just ask the question to your partner, how do you like to be touched? That gives the other person an opportunity to say how they feel like, how they want to be touched.
Yeah.
Are there particular parts of your body that you like more? And as the recipient, you could say, I really love it when you kiss me around my neck. Can you do that more often? Or can you do more of that?
This is going slightly off script, but it's like a last minute question that someone asked me. Is that what chemistry is? Just kind of innately knowing what the other person wants? Or how would you define chemistry?
Yeah.
Given the sexology background?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think there's so much, if you're talking, are you talking about chemistry or desire?
Both, because I think sometimes there's an expectation that the other person should just know what you want.
Yeah.
And if they do, then like, oh, you've got this amazing chemistry. But if they don't know what you want, then like, maybe it's not a good sign.
Yeah. No, I think this is where the issue comes, is that the chemistry is something different. I think it's physiological. I mean, you feel attracted to someone and you can't put words in it. I mean, you have this chemistry, right? But the expectancy that we assume that the person can mind read or understand or be able to tune in to what we want and how we want to be touched, it's not really how it works. But of course, what happens is that when you first start being with someone in the beginning of a relationship, we call that the limerence stage. That feeling of you want to be with that person, you want to cocoon with that person, you have their desire for that person, you want to rip their clothes off, you want to be with them all the time, right? Eventually that calms down. And then that desire also, becomes maybe less. The spontaneous desire becomes less. And it's at that point when couples start to really need to do the work. Because we have to put effort in it. We can't expect that our partner can fully understand or tune in to how best to give us oral sex. The best oral sex we will have is if we navigate them. And it's super sexy if you can actually tell your partner what you're into. The partner usually finds that really hot.
Yeah. Speaking about having the vocabulary of what you're into, I think that links to just body confidence as well.
Yeah.
And just being able to talk about different parts of your body as well as just enjoy and experience pleasure. And I think people really struggle with that.
Yeah.
This is something that a lot of questions were sent in about. And also when I was searching up most frequently asked questions in this area, this was a huge topic around body confidence, feeling good in your body, feeling desire in your body, feeling desired in your body. And so what advice do you have around that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a real tricky one because back to, you know, if we're talking about sex, it's back to really masturbating. You know, if you're able to understand your body and you know how your body, you know, responds, that's going to give you really great confidence to begin with, because then you know what it is that works for you and then you can communicate that to your partner, right? But again, you know, if we're thinking about, there are so many mixed messages out there and influences of, you know, what the ideal body needs to look like. And I think that can be quite difficult for people. And this relates as well to our vulvas and to our penises, right? So I'm not sure if you're familiar with The Great Wall of Vulvas by the artist Jamie McCartney. It's great. And it's a sculpture of loads of vulvas. And what I notice when I see my clients, persons with vaginas, is they have a shame or they feel uncomfortable about their bodies and they have a disconnect with their vulva. They don't like it. It's at arm's length. You know, it's there and it has a function, but they have no relationship with it. Or they have shame because they think it doesn't look the way it should be looking. And when you show them this wall of different vulvas from different age groups, from different backgrounds, and you ask them, is there a vulva that looks a bit like yours? And there's always one that they can find. And you just see them realizing, oh, okay. So it's normal to have an inner labia that is larger than my outer labia. Okay. Because of course, you know, if we bring in porn, for example, where we see most of the vulvas are picture perfect, tidy and neat, we have this idea that that's how vulvas need to look like. So if your vulva looks very different, you think there might be something wrong with that. And of course, that is going to have an impact on how you're going to feel comfortable with sex.
Yeah, I think bodies in general, not just your vulva, but like stretch marks and cellulite and acne and scarring and fat and little like whatever. And that can be really hard when you're constantly bombarded with images, not just through sexual content like porn, but also social media. What's your take on that? What advice do you have for young people and just people in general consuming content all the time around normalizing their body and desiring their body and their partner's body as well?
Yeah, it's really difficult to be able to feel grounded and feel happy with your body because we're so influenced by this ideal of how body needs to look. And I think we're so good at being self-critical. We always focus on what we don't like about our bodies. And one practice I always invite clients to do who struggle with poor body image is for them to, after they've taken a shower, is to stand in front of a mirror, fully naked. And to focus on the parts of their bodies that they like, but then to the detail, you know, eyebrows, their fingers, to the T, their earlobes. And it's quite interesting because, you know, when we're talking about body image to begin with, you know, everything is negative. They don't like anything about their bodies, nothing. When they come back and they've actually done it, and I ask them to do it, a positive affirmation every day. And when they come back after a week, they've gone from 0 to not liking anything about their body to a whole list of things that actually they've liked, which they didn't even realize. Because we are so preoccupied with, if you like, what we refer to as the deficit model. We're looking at what we don't have. We're looking at what we're missing out. So a way around that is to think about what you do have and what you do like, and to embrace that. We can't keep comparing ourselves with other people. It's never ending.
Yeah.
It doesn't make us happy.
What about like judgment of the other person's body? Because that's something that like people struggle with as well. And I've seen people that I know do it in a joking way of like making fun of someone's like on a more, let's do tame level, like someone's height, for example.
Yeah.
Or like whatever. How do you help reset unrealistic standards, not just on yourself, but on the other person? Because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all come with our like imperfections in different areas.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just, it's similar to, not yucking someone's yums. It's the same as not yucking someone's, the way they look. And if you have a real issue with that, then perhaps that person is not for you.
Yeah.
If that's for you so important that you're looking for a particular body shape and you think that's going to make you happy, and then you think that's going to give you satisfaction in your sex life and in your relationship, I say go for it.
Yeah. And what about this whole conversation to do with social media and porn and like how that impacts people's perceptions of bodies, their partner's bodies, other people's bodies?
Yeah.
How can people mindfully consume content and sexual content?
I think this is where it becomes very tricky in terms of being able to navigate through that. And, with porn particular, mainstream porn, it's very much, the size of the penis is all about it. That's what it's all about. When sex is being done, if we're looking at, for example, heterosexual sex, it's never messy. The bodies look always amazing. Yeah. It takes barely any time for the female to orgasm. Duh. And then often they have simultaneous orgasms. Well, that's really realistic.
Should we play a game of like, you debunking what's like true and false from some of these things?
Go on then.
So you said some of these things. Yeah. How, according to the research that you've done and like the clients that you've had, how often do women orgasm just from penetration?
Yeah, I mean, great question. Great question. We know that the majority of females struggle to orgasm just through intercourse. That percentage is quite low. When you ask a female, can they orgasm through intercourse with clitoral stimulation, that percentage goes up higher. When you ask a female who's actively masturbating, can they have an orgasm through masturbating? Oh yeah, no problem within 3 seconds. So that also then says something about, well, there's nothing wrong with you biologically then. There's something then around the partnered sex that they're having. But there's also this whole misconception around how orgasms maybe work. And for some females, by the way, they can have an orgasm very quickly or through intercourse. But a lot of women can't. And they feel that there's something wrong with them. And then they start faking them. Or because they think they don't want to, they think they need too much time. And they think, their partner might become impatient or think there's something wrong with them because they're taking all this time.
Speaking of time, next one of true or false, or debunking. Good sex is simultaneous orgasms.
Yeah. I mean, good sex, define good sex. I mean,
what would you say is good sex?
I mean, good sex is, I think that the issue here is that, first of all, sex is not something that you do. It's something you experience.
That's so powerful.
And if the experience is that it gives you pleasure, then that's amazing. If the experience that you're having is not giving you pleasure, then you change tack. Mm-hmm. So if we're able to do that, and we're able to allow our bodies to be responsive, to allow our bodies to do what it is that they naturally can do, and it's giving us pleasure. The focus is always on pleasure. then everything else is redundant. Then good or bad, right or wrong, it's irrelevant because the focus is on pleasure.
That's so important. And speaking of what you were saying about the body responding, next true or false is to do with spontaneous versus responsive desire, and how you are bad at sex if you don't immediately want to start engaging in it, like at any given point with your partner. Like if you're not just, like you said, in certain content, desire is depicted in a very specific way. Yeah. So how would you debunk that?
Yeah, I mean, there is such an emphasis, Mahika, on desire or on spontaneous desire, but really the desire doesn't really matter. It's a bonus. It's the icing on a cake. What matters is the pleasure.
And how would you define the difference between desire and pleasure?
So, well, you see, traditionally, if we think about psychosexual models, or we think about the Masters and Johnson's model, you know, which has the 4 stages of, desire, excitement, plateau, and resolution. The idea is that you need to have desire in order to have sex is where it sort of goes a little bit wrong. Because yes, it might be for some people, but it's really about, first of all, the first step is having a willingness to be able to or want to step in the sphere of having intimacy. And if we can see sex as going on a journey with no end goal, so when sex becomes not goal-orientated, then that gives desire the space to breathe. So desire might emerge or might surface when we start touching each other. It might not. We might get aroused. We might not. So desire doesn't matter. It's the pleasure. Because if we focus on pleasure, then it becomes less stressed in terms of we feel less pressured. Yeah. Does that make sense? It's a very different way of looking at it.
It's something I've literally never, again, thought of before, but this is why conversations like these are so important. And speaking about pleasure, you said that you brought some gadgets with you. So I think this is a good time to bring it in. What are different ways that people can up their pleasure?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are some gadgets that I've actually bought in terms of if, for example, you might have, let's
talk about it because pain, that kind of stuff is my next area. So I thought, let's talk about desire, pain, all the fun stuff that comes with that. So if you take out the bag, we can address different parts of it.
So first of all, I think, if you're having a little bit of, maybe different, I think the other thing is that we have to remember is that we need to, in order to have any penetration of any form, it's important that we are really well lubricated. And there is no correlate. Some persons with vaginas they lubricate naturally a lot and some don't. So even if you're really, really aroused, it doesn't mean that necessarily you are always lubricated. And the other way around is someone who might not be very aroused might be really lubricated. So it's physiology, right? Mm-hmm. So lube is a great way to bring that into our sex play. Mm-hmm. But we also sometimes have shame around that.
Yeah.
Persons with vaginas, why do I need lube? What's wrong with me? I'm aroused, but why am I not then feeling lubricated? So there's shame around that as well. And it's the same with some males as well, right? So I've just discovered this amazing lube. It's called Uberlube.
Uberlube?
Yeah. And why it's so amazing, it's silicone-based. Mm-hmm. Just look at the bottle.
It looks like perfumes.
It's exactly that. It's so aesthetic. It's so beautiful. You wouldn't even know that this is a lube bottle, right? And why is it so great? Because, and I don't have any shares in this, just that you know.
Not sponsored.
It's smooth. Mm-hmm. It's silky. And it's non-scented. Mm. And you don't need much of it. It's fabulous.
That's awesome. We'll link it down in the, not sponsored again, but we'll link it down. And there's links onto what you were saying around pain and stuff. So is there any other things aside from lube that people can use to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have something that's called the O knot.
What's that?
OHUN.
O knot.
It's called the O knot. That's what it looks like.
Oh. Wait, can you show the camera?
Oh, yes.
Nice.
It's called the O knot. And it's really a wonderful tool. There's 4 of these. And basically what it does is that if a female, particularly someone who hasn't maybe had sex for a very long time and might have had a history of painful sex, feeling worried that her partner might be penetrating too deeply. What this does is that it stops the penis from penetrating at a certain depth. So the more rings you put on, right, that means the less the penis is able to penetrate. So it gives the female a bit of control that she can have some penetration, but knowing that the penis will not go fully in. And then when she starts feeling more comfortable, the ring can come off. And then the penis then can go a bit more deeper.
And how does
it feels so soft. It's made of rubber.
Does it work like a menstrual cup in terms of insertion?
No. So you need to think about it in this way. Okay, this is a penis. Goes like that.
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh, Chantal, my mind is blown. That's crazy.
And it's amazing. And, when you ask couples or individuals who are using this, I always have to ask the male person with the penis, how did it feel? Oh, not a problem. It felt really comfortable. Didn't feel too tight. I still had lots of pleasure. And this is a game changer. So it's called the O knot.
That's awesome. And what is the other stuff that you've got in the box?
So this is particularly these are dilators.
Okay.
And these are used when we're treating vaginismus. And vaginismus is a condition that, and by the way, it's the most treatable. Vaginismus is if there's nothing biologically, organically wrong, right? If everything is okay. What this does, vaginismus is when a female cannot have any penetration. So it means that the vagina opening is completely contracted. And often a person with a vagina thinks that there's something wrong with their vagina, but it's got nothing to do with the vagina. It's actually got to do with the pelvic floor muscles. The pelvic floor muscles start to contract. And when they contract, it affects the vagina opening, which means they can't be penetrated. And often this could be because of a fear of penetration. It could be, back to perhaps sexual scripts and messages that they might have learned. It could be around the idea that they're not allowed to have sex before marriage and they're having sex. So it's having an impact, on their bodies, their bodies, the vulva is closing, it's protecting itself, right? So what we then do is with this lube is that, again, this feels so soft and so silky. It's unbelievable. And we would then ask the client to insert them. And for some, they can't yet insert this. So it could be that we would ask them to use a earbud as a starting point because they are so contracted. And of course, around that, we need to do psychosexual therapy, right? But when they get to the stage when they can start using these, and then they insert them and they just experience, what it feels like for them to have this inserted. And then eventually we always will explore, what might the penis size be when it's erect from their partner, and then we would work towards that.
I've literally never seen any,
But it's understandable. How would you know about these things? And these are called dilators.
We're going to link everything down below for the listeners. But my question is, how would you bring this up with your partner? Say you are in a relatively new relationship.
Yeah.
How do you get all of these things out and feel comfortable having conversations with someone? Because that can be quite, like you said, there's a little bit of stigma attached to like needing to use these things or wanting to use these things. So how can you make it fun and sexy rather than something that's like stressful and difficult to talk about?
Well, to begin with, I think it's important to point out that if anyone is experiencing any pain or any discomfort on a regular basis during sex or after sex, and they are worried, to visit their GP. That's really important, just to cancel out that there might not be anything going on, because, you know, sometimes when you, the same if you're bleeding after intercourse, that could be because you might have dryness, or it could be because you have fibrosis, or you might have endometriosis. But always check with your GP to have an examination of what's going on. So, and in terms of the dilators, this would not be something that you would do yourself. You know, we would want you to, this is not anything, in fact, that we're talking about here. You know, the same with, the O-nut is something you could do. You could, buy that yourself, and you could play around with that with your partner. But again, if you're really struggling and if you have painful sex, it's best to sort of explore what is going on, and maybe you might need some professional help to find out what might be going on with you. With the dilators, that has to be also, you need to be in treatment for that, because, there's a whole process in place before we start doing the dilators. We need to first do the psychosexual education. So I guess back to your question, how do you bring that up? If you feel as a person with a vagina that you're having constant pain, you would want to just say to your partner, I'm experiencing pain. Maybe I need to see a doctor to find out what's going on. How would you feel about me doing that? So that they are in the loop rather than keeping it secret and not saying anything. Because you see, what happens is that when we're not actually saying what's going on, our partner might think that they've done something, or they're not doing something right, or they don't find me attractive. It's classic around orgasms. If the partner can't have an orgasm, the other partner thinks it's because they're doing something wrong in the sex. But often it's because the partner who is struggling to maybe orgasm is either faking it or not really navigating their partner. So back to, what do you do? Just start having a conversation about sex, how you feel that the sex is working. What would you like more of? What would you like less of? How do you like to be touched?
Speaking of conversations, I want to talk about the condom conversation, because that's one that, again, people have sent me so many questions about. And it's something, unfortunately, I've seen across the internet, of something that brings up a lot of awkwardness and discomfort. And so how can you approach that in a way that protects like your boundaries, but also the other person's like desire and everything at the same time? Because like the way that it's discussed on the internet, there's like this whole thing around stealthing that you were talking about, but then also around like how to still experience pleasure, but make sure that the boundaries and the safety of both partners are respected.
Yeah. And I think, safe sex has got nothing to do with desire, first of all. And I think what's important is that, again, the reason why we make it awkward is because we make such a big deal out of it. We think that the minute we are asking to use a condom, we see that as an obstacle. oh, I don't want to use a condom because it's going to spoil the moment. Okay. How is that different if you're having sex play and you're bringing in a sex toy? Do we say the same thing? Oh, it's spoiling the moment because we're interrupting our sex play and we're bringing a sex toy. No, we don't say it in that way. So it's about making the condom part of your sex play, not seeing it as an obstacle, but it's part of your sex play. And therefore, we're normalizing it.
Yeah.
And being clear, it's not, you can have as much sex as you like. Great, go for it, right? But, let's be safe about it. So if you're into hookups, absolutely fine. But perhaps having that conversation beforehand, by the way, I've got condoms, I use condoms. Well, if someone says, well, I don't want to use them because, I'd have no sensitivity or I don't really like them or I can't get an erection, then you need to, I guess, reclaim bossy. Here we go. You need to then decide, well, do I want to, stand my ground here and do I want to risk myself maybe contracting an STI? Because here's the thing, you're not only having unprotected sex with that person, but potentially you're having unprotected sex with 50, 60, 70 other people that they've also had previous sex with. And that's the thing we're not talking about. We're not realizing that.
Yeah.
Right? Same with oral sex. We don't talk about, we've got the dental amps, where, when we're having oral sex, we can also get STIs from that. Now, I'm not saying that we should only be using that. But I think we make it awkward because we see it as an obstacle. Make it as part of the play. Make it playful.
Around the stealthing conversation, can you just bring a little bit of awareness of what that is for anyone who doesn't know and how they can navigate that if that's something that they've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite shocking. I had to write something about that in the media some time ago. And stealthing basically is when you, with a partner or with someone, have agreed to use a condom, but during the sex, the person removes the condom without your consent. That's just completely inappropriate. It's just shocking. It's complete non-consensual, right? Or the other thing that's referred to as stealthing is when the person deliberately damages the condom ahead of time. That's also a form of stealthing. And, it's interesting because sometimes people say, well, how could you not know if the condom is taken off? You can see that. It's like, well, it depends what position you're in. If you're having sex from doggy position, how would you know? Yeah, but you'd feel it. Not necessarily, because there are some condoms like, Skin is a really good brand. It's, it feels so smooth and it's so soft. You don't know. And if you're really aroused, right, how are you going to know that that's been taken off? So it's a violation, and it's an absolute no-no.
And what advice would you have for anyone that is maybe concerned that they're going to experience that or has experienced that in getting the support that they need?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say get tested. If you think that might have happened to you, get tested, first of all, and very quickly. The other thing is, that's where social media comes in. Make it viral. Yeah, bad behavior deserves to be put in public.
Yeah. Wow.
That's, we talk about social media and we're on dating profiles, sometimes you give feedback about people. Great. Pre-warn other females.
Yeah.
Or males, right?
Is it a crime? Is it something that you can report to the police?
It's a good question.
This is something I'm going to look up and put on the screen if you're not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, it should be a crime. As far as I'm concerned, it should be a crime because it's non-consensual, just like rape, non-consensual. Yeah. So, and back to getting the support, maybe get some support and some counseling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The thing is not to hold it. Yeah. And also, I think what can sometimes happen is that there might be some shame that comes with that. Mm-hmm. How could I not have known that? How could I not have felt that, the condom was taken off.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my fault. I should not have had that one night stand. Right?
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They've done nothing wrong.
And how would we approach, like, how can people approach fear? Because I think we've touched on a few themes that people can be scared of. Stealthing, STIs, pain. These are things that people kind of maybe get in their head about and choose to not participate in sex or sexual activities because it just doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah.
Or it can be scary or whatever.
Yeah.
How can you remove the fear from sex and have like your boundaries and be respectful to yourself, your partner, and just be happy about it as well?
Yeah. Well, if we think about STIs, it's very common that a lot of people will eventually have caught an STI. It's not a major problem at all. It's no big deal. You have an STI, you get tested. As long as you're getting tested on a regular basis, particularly if you're having maybe, a lot of sex with different partners, all you need to do is then get tested. If you happen to get an STI, it's not the end of the world. You get treatment. Antibiotics. So that's easy, right? With regards to the painful sex, that's something different because if you have a condition, and it might be a condition that maybe might be difficult to treat, then you might always have a degree of pain. Then it's about maybe getting some therapy or maybe even sex therapy then, to kind of then deal with how then to have maybe sex in a different way. So it might be about different positions that you can't really do because that gives you pain, or you might need a lot more time before you can have intercourse, or maybe you're not having intercourse at all. It's about, again, thinking outside the box. How could we be intimate? How can we have pleasure? Right? So it's just, navigating through these issues that we might be having. It's nothing to be fearful of. Right?
That's really important. And removing the shame and the fear is like such an important step in having a good and healthy sex life. I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this, but we're running out of time. So I want to do some rapid fire questions. So these are some of the most Googled questions about sex. Just dispel them or say, like, you don't have to go into too much detail because I know a lot of these questions will be answered with "it depends," but it's really useful to get your take. So how long should sex really last is number one question.
Until it's no longer pleasurable.
Fabulous answer. Why do I bleed during sex?
Could be different reasons. It could be because of a dryness in your vagina. It could be because you might have polyps. It could be because you might have fibrosis. So if this happens and you feel that it's giving you distress, go and visit your GP.
What makes a good lubricant for sex or masturbation? I mean, you've already shown us this one.
I've shown you that one.
And how does that work with if you want to use condoms as well? Because
it's a really good question. So first of all, if you're using this particular lube, which is silicone-based, not to be used with sex toys that are silicone-based, not a good idea. And you need to use a different type of water-based condom, water-based lube. If you use for example, the brand Skin, because it's made of a particular rubber, latex, the Uber lube works really well with that. So it depends on what the condom is made of.
And what do you, so...
There's a word for that and I can't think of the word right now.
So you said there's water-based and silicone-based lubes.
And this is oil-based.
Oil-based. And so is there...
You don't want to use oil-based when you use a condom because it will slip, right?
Okay.
So you would use water-based or you can use silicone-based if the condom is made of a particular, what's the word? I think it's something polyestyrene or something.
Is will it be on the box? Can people so how would people know what's the correct condom loop thing, like will it be written on the box of things that they can say?
Yeah, so the condoms will always have written what it's made of.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then you know which loop to use. But to be honest, if you're using water-based, you can use that with all condoms.
Okay.
Oil-based, you never use with condoms.
Okay.
And then with silicone-based, you just need to check what the condom is made of.
Perfect.
If that makes sense.
Yes. And our last question on this rapid fire is, how often is normal to have sex?
Yeah. How often is normal to have sex? I mean, here we go back to the question of what is normal. I think the answer to that is there is no normal. I mean, I think that's so individual. It's so, I mean, it's a really, people ask me that, what is normal? How much time to, I think as long as couples want to have sex and it gives them that pleasure and they have the time and they have the space to do it and they're doing that they're doing it consensually, they can have it every day. If some couples want it only maybe once a week because that's all they have the capacity for, then that's okay. If couples want it once a month, that works as well. We can't quantify what is normal. It's whatever works for those that are actually having sex.
Amazing. Chantal, I'm closing the laptop because my questions are done. Last question is, where can people find you and engage with your work?
Oh, yes. So I have a website and you can find me via the website.
Cool. I will link it all down below. And I said last question, but my final question. This podcast is all about reclaiming being bossy. What does that mean for you?
Empowerment when it comes to sex and relationships.
I love that. Thank you so much for your advice, your inspiration and your honesty. I'm sure you're going to have so many questions in the comments. And so we're going to welcome you back for part 2. But thank you so much for your time. You are incredible.
Thank you, Mahika, for having me.
Yeah.